Today, which is found in Mark chapter 16. Just some thoughts from this passage this morning. Mark chapter 16, verses 1 to 8. It's entitled, Jesus Has Risen. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome brought spices so that they might go to anoint Jesus' body. Very early on the first day of the week, just after sunrise, they were on their way to the tomb, and they asked each other, "Who will roll the stone away from the entrance of the tomb?" But when they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had been rolled away. As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. "Don't be alarmed," he said. "You are looking for Jesus the Nazarene, who was crucified. He has risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him. But go, tell his disciples and Peter, he is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you." Trembling and bewildered, the women went out and fled from the tomb. They said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. We give thanks to God for his amazing word. Do you know, when we come to this passage, which features Mary Magdalene so strongly, we recognize that Easter Sunday was a real roller coaster of emotions for her. You see, when they were going to that tomb, they were actually going for burial purposes. It was part of their grieving process. They hadn't had a chance to have a funeral. Jesus had died just before the sun set on the Sabbath. And so the next day, according to Jewish custom, no work could be done. And so embalming the body was just a big no-no. Obviously, at the end of Sabbath, the sun had set again, like on the Saturday, so it was dark. There was no way that they could go and do it. This was the first and earliest opportunity that the women had in order to go to the tomb, to just kind of express their grief and to minister to the body of Jesus. They were thinking about consecration, burial preparation. And so I'm trying to explain about expectation. They had no expectation that they were about to encounter the risen Jesus. Their expectation was death rather than resurrection. So it's in this context that we can imagine all the emotion. It's in this context that we can imagine the reactions when they reach the empty tomb. In the passage that we've just read together in verse 5, it really succinctly just says they were alarmed. They were alarmed. And I've been trying to put myself in the shoes of these women. What was the third day really like for them? What did it mean for them? Actually, the word that really comes to mind about this Easter Sunday morning was it was astonishing. I'm not quite sure how much, in all the emotion that was going on, I'm not quite sure how much of the angel's message, like when you get astonishing news, you're not necessarily listening to those people around you, kind of like zoned out. And so I'm not quite sure how much Mary and the women gathered of the angel's message, how much they were able to grasp. But the response was clear. Do not be alarmed. You are looking for Jesus, the Nazarene, who was crucified. He has risen. He is not here. See the place where they had laid him. That was the context. But look at the reaction. Trembling and bewildered, the women went out and fled from the tomb. They said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. The actual Greek word we get for bewildered there is ecstasy. And so I think we see that there was a whole range of emotions. They were fearful, they were confused, but there was something incredibly exciting about what was going on. He has risen. And so just in these moments, I want to ask the question, what can we learn from this encounter? What can we take away from this empty tomb and what seems to be a crazy moment? Just two things I want to highlight. First of all, I want to say today is that when you seek Jesus, you find Jesus. When you seek Jesus, you find Jesus. Verse 7, he is going ahead of you into Galilee. This is what the angel said. He's going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you. I absolutely love those words. The angel said to Mary, you will see him. Mary, don't be afraid. You will see Jesus. The one thing that is really clear is that, as I've said, this was the first opportunity. This was the earliest opportunity that the women had to go to the tomb to minister to Jesus. They understood that there were barriers. They understood there were obstacles. They recognized that there was a guard placed on the tomb. And even on the way, they were discussing, how are we going to get to the body of Jesus? How are we going to move the stone? There were obstacles and there were barriers, but in an amazing way, they were able to find him. They didn't find him in the tomb, but ultimately they found him in Galilee. And I just want to share this as an encouragement, really, because I guess that might be true here today that some of us are searching. Think of you too. I still haven't found Bono's words. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. And those lyrics resonate, don't they, for so many people. I'm still searching for meaning. My life is confusing. Not everything is fitting together. I don't know the direction of my life. But I just want to say that if you seek Jesus, whatever might seem to be the obstacles, whatever might seem to be the barriers, the promise of Easter Sunday is that you will find him. You might find him in unexpected places. You might find him in unexpected circumstances, in unexpected ways. But if you seek Jesus, you will find him. That was the experience of these women. They recognized the difficulty and the challenge. And it wasn't at the tomb that they found him, but it was almost out of that devotion that they had. Out of that devotion, they encountered Jesus. And so I just want to encourage, the first thing I want to do is to encourage that if you're seeking today some direction in your life, I just want to say, if you seek Jesus, you will find him. That's the first thing. But the second thing takes it a bit further. The second thing I want to draw out from Easter Sunday is what you experience, go and tell. This is the second lesson from this passage. What you experience, go and tell. Verse 7, the angel gives an instruction, but go, tell his disciples and Peter. I love this. Go and tell. Mary, I want you to share all that you've received. I want you to share all that you've encountered. I want you to go and tell. And it's actually a message of grace. You see, it's interesting that the angel gives a specific instruction. Go to the disciples and Peter. Now, some commentators suggest that Peter was singled out here because he may not have been physically with the others. We know that out of a sense of cowardice, that Peter had promised much but delivered little, really. He'd said that I will be with you, Jesus, every step of the way, even if it's to the point of death. And yet we all know that when the cock crowed, Jesus had said, truly I tell you, you will disown me 3 times. Peter was broken. Peter genuinely thought that his life was in such a mess that there was absolutely no way back. He thought that basically he had burnt all his bridges relationally with Jesus. He knew that he'd stuffed up. He was in such a place of despair. Some commentators feel that he had isolated himself. And I guess there is some theory in that, but I actually think that if you plot where Peter was in some of the other gospel accounts, he hadn't isolated himself physically from the other disciples, but he certainly was in an inner turmoil. There was no doubt that he was emotionally isolated from Jesus. I'm not sure that's really any better, to be honest. You can be in a big crowd but still feel alone. And what I love here is that Jesus knows the individual. He knows exactly what's going on. He knows, like, if the wheels have fallen off your wagon. He knows if you know that you've stuffed up. He knows everything about us. And yet he's always looking out. He singles Peter out because of grace. He singles Peter out because of love. He singles Peter out because he really, really wants relationship to be restored. And that's what Easter is all about. Broken lives being restored, and we see it right there. But you know, it needs someone to carry that message. Mary, go and tell. Go and tell Peter that there's a God who still loves you. And so I just want to say 2 things. Like, it might be here today that some of us feel that we've really stuffed up. Made a mess of things. I want you to feel and know, if that's you, I want you to feel and know the grace of God today. Because Jesus knows your heart, he knows everything about you, and he loves you. He really, really loves you. And I want you to hear that today. I don't think it would be an accident that you're here to hear the message that Jesus really loves you. But I also think there's a dimension here where God says to his church, to those who are devoted to him, go and tell. This is a beautiful message. This is a message of grace. This is a message of love. Just go and share. Go and tell that message. It's the first commissioning that we see. Go and tell. What we do with those buckets seems, like I said, it seems crazy, but it's modeled from a guy called Chris Duffett, who the whole thing is called Go and Tell. It's about blessing. It's about blessing. And so I think there's a sense here of that today, if you follow Jesus, he entrusts with you a beautiful experience that he wants you to share in a simple, lovely way. In other words, there's a call here to share our experience of Jesus. And Mary went and did that. And it led to Peter, whose life was broken, being restored. I think there's a ministry of reconciliation that God entrusts to his church. And so there we have it. What was the 3rd day really like for the women at the tomb? What do we learn from this encounter? And just 2 things I want to say. The first thing was this: when you seek Jesus, you will find him. And secondly, what you experience, why don't you share that with others? Because it leads to restoration. So my encouragement is this: seek Jesus, share Jesus.